Victor, would you say the pledge of allegiance for us tonight, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Councilor Johnson,
Here.
Councilor Schleybach,
Here.
Councilor Segala,
Here.
Mayor Becker.
Here.
A quorum is declared.
Applications to agenda. Approvals of consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Anita?
Councilor Segala,
Aye.
Councilor Johnson,
Aye.
Councilor Schleybach,
Aye.
Mayor Becker.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Appointment of new council member. We will do a ballot vote.
Okay, just so you all know that these ballots are public record. And tonight, we would like to welcome Kathleen Elthorpe as our new council member. Miss Elthorpe. You'd like to raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Kathleen Elthorpe,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Monte Vista,
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Monte Vista,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties of office
the duties of
of
office
council member of which I am about to enter.
of council member, which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is tonight. And then after the meeting, I have other stuff.
Okay, we'll do the selection of board representation. We as council will set on these boards, but also have volunteers from the city, employees as well as community. We want the community to be involved, so we're going to go through the list. We got a few of them already, but we'll go through the list. Rio Grande Board of Health, Carol said she would like to stay on that board, and we will do that accordingly. Urban Renewal Authority, that's one that Debbie was on, correct?
That's correct.
Let's do that one. Tree Board, Rob,
I am part of the tree board, yes, sir.
is there anybody else that would like to, is that a big board or not?
It needs some members. Right now, it's only 4 members. Carol Schrader was one of the board members, myself, and then there's two residents that are on that.
Is there anybody in the crowd that would like to be on the tree board?
And just
Mr. Polston?
Just as a clarification, if they're on these boards, they're as a representative liaison between council and the board, correct?
Correct, and you will go to those meetings and then report accordingly to the city council.
Thank you, Jim.
Youth advisory?
I believe Jaime sits on that board.
I'm sorry.
Jaime?
Jaime is?
Yes.
Anybody else?
And
Jim?
Mr. Mayor, I am presently on the Youth Advisory Board for the Kids Connection.
Okay. Golf course board? Anybody here on the board?
Currently, that was Joe.
I was on the board. The communication was a little interesting with that. We can continue trying to work with them and see where that gets us. I'm willing to remain as that.
I can do that if it's a issue.
I could too.
Why don't we just put you on there, Kathy?
Okay, thank you.
It's easier for you to volunteer as to be appointed. Library board?
That's currently Joe.
And that one was a pretty big scheduling conflict for me. I had talked with Carol Lee about that. And if somebody else is interested in doing that,
Do you know when they meet?
they generally meet Tuesday nights, the same Tuesday that we have our work sessions generally, which becomes a bit challenging there. But if we could probably work with them to see if the schedule could get shifted around, or if somebody else that doesn't have a conflict would try something.
So that'll be the third Tuesday of each month, essentially.
Yeah,
Third Tuesday?
and it's every other month. It's not every month.
But the work sessions are 4th.
Go ahead.
The work sessions are the Tuesday before the second council meeting of every month. So sometimes it's the
So it
fourth,
could
sometimes
be-
it's the third. It kind of fluctuates a little bit.
And those will start next month. Victor, were you on to do that, or?
Sure.
You wanna do that?
That's the library board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Crane Festival.
That's currently Joe.
So I'm currently on that board. I've enjoyed working with the people that do some great things. I'm more than willing to stay on unless somebody else wants it.
I'm fine with it.
Fine with what? Doing that, or fine with Joe?
Oh, no, I'm fine with children. I'm sorry.
You are getting appointed. Council of Governments?
Interestingly enough on that, Mr. Mayor, the previous council, when we were doing the budget this year, voted not to renew our dues to the Council of Governments, so I'm not sure we need an appointment to that at this time.
We'll leave that one open. Upper Rio Grande Economic Development, currently Joe.
Yeah. I've
Do you want to
established a
do it?
good relationship with those folks. It's been a great 2 years working with them. I would love to continue working with them if that's good with everybody.
And then
As
I'm,
long as you can handle
and
them
then
all.
I'm actually on that board.
Right.
I can help attend that too. Airport Board,
It's currently Rob.
I'm on that. Still willing to be there.
if you need any help, let me know, Will.
Okay.
Rio Grande Basin Roundtable. That ever have representation?
Jason Lorenz.
We got it next to it.
Jason, would you be willing to represent that still on behalf of the council?
I could realize that we don't have any official capacity there. We just sit in the audience is all we do. We don't have any say or whatsoever.
But you could keep
I can
us,
sit in, I can go to meetings.
okay, I would appreciate that. Colorado Rural Water Association,
That's actually myself and Bob Abeda.
and who?
Bob Abeda, our utility supervisor.
No.
Planning and Zoning,
That was Matt.
I would volunteer for that.
I also have a community member that'd be interested too.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, if you got a community member that's interested, would they actually be interested in being on the P and Z itself?
He said he would.
Awesome. Well, if we could get in contact, that'd be great, because we can use additional commissioners.
Recreation,
That was Matt.
I can do that one.
you'll do that one, Victor? City School Committee,
That was previously Matt and the mayor.
Why don't you let me do that? I'd be a good person for that. I think so.
okay.
She's educated.
CML Policy Commission,
So,
That was Matt.
yeah, that was Matt, and there's actually quite a bit involved with that commission, just before anybody jumps into that very quickly. They generally host, what is it, quarterly meetings in Denver, and so to get to Denver, put in that amount of time on a quarterly basis is challenging. I just wanted everybody to be aware of that. I'm not sure for what.
did you raise your hand,
I
Brandon?
did raise my hand, but I put it back down. It's not allowed right now.
Hey Dale, would that be city municipal, is that what that is?
Yes.
Colorado.
Colorado Municipal League.
I'm willing to be on that. I can serve on that, I have the time to spend with those quarterly meetings and travel up there. I have family up there anyway, pretty easy.
That's a good idea.
Don Martinez. Theater Board, Anita,
Absolutely.
and the Chamber Board.
Right now, that's me there.
Is there still room for people?
There's other people, I'm sure that if a member of council wanted to sit in on that, they're usually morning meetings, breakfast around 7 o'clock. So,
Any other volunteers for the Chamber?
I'd be
When are
interested.
those meetings?
7 o'clock in the morning on,
I think it's
The
the
fourth Thursday.
fourth Thursday.
what was the other board we talked earlier? The Ag Board?
No, the SLV Go. Joe had brought that up, that it actually does exist.
It does exist?
Yes.
Yeah, and once again, the challenge with that is it's very conflicting with my schedule. And while I absolutely love that board, they've done a tremendous amount of work in bringing a lot of money in GoCo funded grants into the valley. The skate park over here is an example of that. The Faith Hinckley Memorial Park. There's a lot of examples around the valley that you can see. They bring a tremendous amount of money into the valley, but my schedule is pretty rough with that one.
When do they meet?
They generally meet at like, I want to say 2 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. So it makes it a little difficult if you have a regular job to get to it.
I could do it. I could make room.
And McDaniel's the one that heads up that.
Yeah, I could make room for that.
Mr. Mayor, real quick, we also have two other boards that I just noticed that weren't on here that council may be interested in attending. Currently, I attend both of those. One is the Transportation Planning Region with State of Colorado Department of Transportation. And they meet once a month and just do everything that goes under the statewide transportation improvement plan. So, and then also the landfill board, as it's a regional solid waste authority. I serve as the city's liaison for that.
And there's room for both of those boards?
If council would like to take that, I mean, either one of those two boards, one of you are more than welcome to. I mean, I don't mind staying on them by any means. The CDOT TPR would be good to have council members have a little more authority than they do as a public works director.
Once a month.
The next meeting is February 2nd.
What time
10
of
o'clock,
day?
they go from 10 o'clock to about 1 o'clock at the Alamosa County offices.
I wouldn't mind taking that on if there's room, or were you planning to do it?
The TPR, there's always room. There's always room for the TPR. And currently on the landfill board, there's 2 county commissioners, a commissioner from Rio Grande County, a commissioner from Alamosa County, both public works directors from both counties, cities, Alamosa, Monte Vista, and then the planner for Rio Grande County.
I'll good with you on those meeting times. Okay, is there any others?
I have a question. Jim, you might be able to answer this. Nita, with you being the representative now with City Council, you are currently on the board of the theater board, correct?
Correct.
That leaves one more position available, an opening. Is that correct, Jim?
On the theater board?
Yeah.
I would say yes.
I mean, I think we need a lot of more community involvement in the theater. I'm actually on the theater board, so. And if there's anybody here that would be interested, I think that would be.
Is there anybody interested?
And council does make those appointments.
When do they, excuse me, when do
The
they?
third Wednesday of, at 6.
Can you think about it a little while?
Right?
Yes, ma'am. Is that it for the boards? Is there any we're missing?
I mean, I attend the ag committee meetings.
Ag
for the-
conference?
Yeah, for the conference, just to make sure that we, as far as city staff, know what needs to happen before the, make sure we arrange snow removal, carriage, that and that stuff.
Did we discuss the landfill?
Yes.
I missed it? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Glad you got that under control.
Counselor, did you want to be on the landfill board?
That was a consideration, and I missed the discussion.
The next meeting's January 23rd at 9 o'clock.
9, okay. Where?
At the landfill.
At the landfill? It's monthly?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, put me down for that.
I won't be able to attend that meeting, I already notified the board.
Did you get that, Anita?
I did.
Okay. We're going to discuss the water attorney information. Where'd you go? There you are. Which one of you are speaking?
Both of us.
Go ahead.
Can I get somebody to get the lights on there, please?
I tried to move you to all cancer people.
All right, well, thank you for having us here this evening. I'm Kate Ryan,
I'm Peter Nichols.
and we wanted to give you all an update with regard to the 2 water law cases that we have been representing you as the city in. They've been progressing really well. The last time I was here was in September with one of your water resource consultants to talk about settling one of the cases. We were here then, and then we were here about a year prior to that to do a work session, catch the city council up. At this point in time, there are 2 cases pending in the water court in Division 3 in Alamosa. The first one is the groundwater rules case. The state engineer in 2015 filed the groundwater rules to seek approval by the court. And those are rules pursuant to which well users in the Rio Grande Basin are going to have to replace injurious stream depletions that their wells cause. So when someone pumps a well, it has a depletive effect on streams, both near and far from the well, depending what type of well it is. And water users, when those rules go into effect, are going to have to replace the depletions. Monte Vista, of course, does have several wells in the confined aquifer and in the unconfined aquifer, and so it's going to have to replace the depletions from those wells. So what we did in that case was to represent the city of Monte Vista's interests, to make sure that the rules would be interpreted by the state and the more local water administrators, the division engineers, in a way that's friendly to the city, and to make sure that all of the data regarding the city's wells was appropriate, because all of the data that's used to show what water's pumped from that wells in the future as well as in the past will impact the replacement obligations of Monte Vista. And so that's work that has been done by Bicus Water Consultants. They're based out of Durango. And so we've been working on that. The rules will require well users to replace those well depletions. The other part of the rules, there's 3 main areas of the rules. The other part of the rules that's significant to the city of Monte Vista is that well users are going to have to generally decrease their well pumping to 1978 through 2000 levels for confined wells. So the reason for that is deep wells that go all the way into the confined aquifer are taking water out, and the state has to make sure by law that well users aren't taking out any more than they were taking out on average over the 1978 through 2000 period. That's something that the General Assembly for the state of Colorado decided was a sustainable level of well pumping. And for reasons I'll discuss when it gets to the second case that you're involved in, that's not a major problem for the city of Monte Vista, but it is a major aspect of the rules. The third aspect of the rules is that they will provide irrigation season criteria for well users and for surface water users as well, which will level the playing field between wells and surface water users. But basically there's going to be an irrigation season that is presumably operates from April through October 15th. And that is when well users and surface water users can take water out of either the stream or out of their wells and use it for irrigation. So as I said, in the process of negotiating this groundwater rules case, there was a technical component to the work that was done on behalf of Monte Vista, and there was a legal component that was done on behalf of Monte Vista. Bicus Water Consultants evaluated the Rio Grande Decision Support System model. Water users call it the RGDSS model. They made sure that that model looked like it was accurate. It wasn't going to show that Monte Vista was pumping and the depletive effect on the rivers was much greater than it was. So they evaluated that. And they also looked at the requirements that Monte Vista would be facing when the rules go into effect for both augmentation and sustainability. Augmentation being that replacement of depletions, and sustainability being meeting the reduction of pumping to 1978 to 2000 levels. From the legal side of things, Peter and I have represented you, and we've negotiated settlement terms with the state and division engineers that ensure that when the rules go into effect, they will fairly treat Monte Vista. We also represented some other local municipalities, including Del Norte and Swatch, which was a great advantage to everybody because it helped us in working with the state as well as with the Rio Grande Water Conservation District to make sure that the state would be fairly treating all municipalities as well as irrigation and other well users who are generally represented by the interest of the Rio Grande Water Conservation District. So when Jordan Dimmick from Bicus Water Consultants and I came here earlier in the fall of 2017, just this last fall, we presented 4 main settlement terms to the City of Monte Vista that we had worked out with the state and division engineers in the groundwater rules case. Forrest has a memo on file, and I can send it again, that described these settlement terms in greater detail for you. But we were successfully able to get those 4 settlement terms put into a stipulation that the state and division engineers agreed to. Based on that stipulation, it was signed by us on behalf of Monte Vista, and it was signed by the state and division engineers, by their attorneys. That ended Monte Vista's participation in the groundwater rules case. So we were very, very pleased with those 4 terms. One of those terms in particular is going to be really important. Since Monte Vista has a wastewater treatment facility, it has a one spot on the Rio Grande where it returns all its accretions. So you take water out through wells, for instance, like somebody at their residence takes water out, they use it whether it's at their tap or on their gardens, and then that water returns through the sewer system and through the wastewater treatment facility to the Rio Grande. This settlement term is going to ensure that all that water that gets returned to Rio Grande, Monte Vista gets full credit for it, so you don't have to replace that water again in a plan for augmentation. And we spent a lot of time working that out with the state and division engineers, with the Rio Grande Water Conservation District, and we spent a lot of time working with those entities, both because it was a complex idea that the rules did not explicitly address. And it's also been very important because it's going to be a really great benefit to the area as a whole. Not only will Monte Vista get full credit for that accretion, which it might not have otherwise gotten, but it's really going to benefit all the well users in this area so that we can get optimum use of water. And so it's going to help wells in the area that are used for irrigation keep pumping and get full credit for their well depletions, and it really evens the playing field. So we're very, very pleased about that. So everything that we asked the state for, we got, and we're quite pleased about it. The groundwater rules case it looks like it's probably heading to trial at the end of January. There were probably 46 different parties, including maybe 6 municipalities and many other well users that objected to the rules for various reasons. Most of them have settled. I say about 30 of the 40 parties have settled. There's some individual well users who haven't settled, and there's some larger groups who haven't settled, and they're going to trial. The importance of that is there can't be any change to the rules. Everything you've gotten in your settlement is going to be there, and the rules are not going to be changed. They can't be republished by the state because of the way the rules for this litigation work. But why it's important to Monte Vista is the rules may not go into effect for quite some time still. So we'll see. If everybody does end up settling before trial, which they could because it's an expensive endeavor to go to trial, they could do that. Then the rules will go into place in the next few months, and Monte Vista will have 2 years to come into compliance with the rules, to start replacing those depletions and meeting the sustainability. If, however, the case goes to trial, it could be a year. If it goes to trial, it could be appealed, it could be several years. So we don't really know yet exactly when when those rules will go into effect. However, Monte Vista is in a great position because we have already filed a plan for augmentation on behalf of the city. So the plan for augmentation is that second water court case. We filed the water court application last December. The reason we wanted to get it filed quickly is there are some claims that have a priority date associated with them. So when you get a water rate, your water rate has a priority date. The earlier it is, the better. So a water court application filed in 2016, if it has those appropriative rights, it's more valuable or it has a higher priority than a water court application filed in 2018. So we filed in 2016 to make sure the city could get in line with some of the appropriative rights contained in that application. And the application includes all the claims that will be necessary to ensure the replacement of depletions from Monte Vista's wells, as well as to meet the sustainability requirement. City of Monte Vista is in a great position with respect to the sustainability requirement. That's the requirement to bring well pumping down to 1978 through 2000 levels. Even if Monte Vista grows, well pumping generally over the last few years has decreased, and that's because of metering. When people are metered, they just tend to use water more efficiently and not use as much quantity in their homes. If you pay for it, you don't use as much. So because of that, the city of Monte Vista is in a very good position. We filed the application, and there are 8 statements of opposition from different water users in the Rio Grande area. Some of those have filed statements of opposition that actually support Monte Vista's application. They just want to be involved in the application because this is one of the first applications there are pursuant to which any well user is going to come into compliance with the rules. So for instance, the city of Alamosa, they want to see how it goes, and they want to work with us to make sure that it's a successful application because they will want to have similar claims. Other water users have filed to monitor to see what's going on in the application to make sure it doesn't injure their water rights. So nothing surprising has happened. It's going relatively smoothly so far. It's not on a fast track either. Water court applications typically take a couple of years to go through the courts. In this case, it could take even longer because the groundwater rules may not go into effect for some time, or they could go into effect in 2 years, depending what happens in that case and whether it goes to trial in January. I did want to show you this graph, and hopefully I'm happy to circulate a hard copy so you all can see better, but it's just really interesting. Bicus Water Consultants put this together, and it shows some of the complexity of well depletions and the requirements of the groundwater rules. The big blue number at the top is 905, and that is the impact of Monte Vista's well pumping on the upper reaches of the Rio Grande. It's in blue, whereas there are a bunch of other numbers in red that aren't quite as big. In the upper reaches of the Rio Grande, where Monte Vista is located and where its wells are located, the city pumps water, and there's actually more water returning to the river than is depleted to the river by the wells. So that's why it's a blue number. The red numbers show two lower reaches of the Rio Grande where the net impact of well pumping is depletive. So when Monte Vista pumps its wells, there are depletions that have to be replaced to those areas of the Rio Grande. And there are actually depletions on the Alamosa River and the Canales as well. And that's what I want to show you. I just think that's amazing because we have these wells in Monte Vista, they go really deep. And because there are confining layers of shale in here, that directs the movement of water from streams all the way to the wells where they pull water out, and it's delivered to Monte Vista's customers. So that's why these applications are pretty complex. It's also why we have been very pleased and feel fortunate to have had good negotiations so far with the Rio Grande Water Conservation District, whom we're going to work with so that well users who belong to the sub-districts can take advantage of all those accretions in the upper Rio Grande, and in return Monte Vista can get some payback from the sub-districts on the Alamosa River and the Canales rivers. So it's a really nice collaboration for a very complicated system. So that's pending. I see if Peter wants to add anything.
I want to just add something that, we've been working on this for close to 10 years for the city. In 2004, when the state engineer started drafting the rules, they thought it was going to take a couple years. In 2007, they said we're going to get it done by the end of this year. They didn't get it done until 2015, but in 2007, we started working to prepare the city to comply with the rules, because obviously as a municipality, you don't want to be in a position where your wells could be red tagged. In other words, the state engineer would come in and tell you to shut down the wells, which then would deprive your citizens of the right to use any water. So we've been sort of way ahead of the game, but it's really been helpful in terms of being able to negotiate with the state division engineers some things in the rules that were sort of not directly addressed in the rules, and that's the reason we applied. We protested the rules and worked out the stipulation that Kate went through, was to sort of make sure that for our plan for augmentation for the city, the things that are important to the city, we know how the state is going to treat those, and they're going to treat them in a way that will be fair and favorable to the city of Monte Vista. So by working, Kate mentioned we represent a lot of the other municipalities in the valley, and we do that, and that has given us a little bit more political clout, I guess, in dealing with the state, but also we're able to split up all the costs amongst the various municipalities and really keep the costs down to a minimum. And we split up the costs on the base of population, which seems like basically the fairest way to do it. So we'd be happy to answer any questions. We know this is pretty technical and some of you are new to this, so feel free to pick up a phone anytime and call Kate or call me that you've got any questions, but we do try and come down every few months, as Kate said, and keep you informed when there are significant things that happen. And the most significant that's happened is, in fact, the settlements actually got signed after Kate was down here in December.
Can I get a phone number?
Yeah, we can even give you cards.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll work great. Thank you.
I had a question. You had, sounded like you were talking about a lot of different cases. But initially sounded like there were just two. Are they just kind of combined? And
Yeah, so there's the state's application for approval of the groundwater rules, and then there's Monte Vista's application for a plan for augmentation.
Okay. Those are the two main.
The only two really that we're in.
Okay. And who is, I don't know what they would be, the defendant or whatever, whoever is, or whoever's settling? Who are we talking about? Are we talking about ranchers or users or communities or?
It is mostly, so part of Monte Vista's plan for augmentation, some of the replacement water will come from changed irrigation water rates that the city of Monte Vista holds now, but they're not decreed for replacement use or for augmentation use. So some of the opposers are those ditch companies.
Okay.
Prairie Ditch Company, the Rio Grande Water Users Association, which works with the McDonald Ditch Company. The City of Alamosa is a friendly opposer or an opposer in support. We initially applied for some appropriative rights that involve the Conejos River. So Conejos Water Conservancy District is involved.
The Rio Grande Water Conservation District
Yep.
is involved just because they're involved in every case.
Yeah, and a lot of these opposers, it's interesting, I mean, it's really very much the way water court works. In some ways, you want them to be opposers because you want them to be involved so that your application protects their water rights, and so that you follow all of the procedures that are needed with the ditch companies and to make sure they're involved. We need everybody working together, so that's not bad. On the other hand, they're in your case, so it takes time and money to deal with them. One opposer we do not have in the case, a very conspicuous opposer, which is interesting, are the state and division engineers. They did not file a statement of opposition in the case.
Which is a good thing. Normally they do.
They're probably the ones that take the most time and effort to.
And we were surprised they didn't because they knew, and we had already filed a statement of opposition in their case, the rules case, that when we filed the augmentation plan. So we've developed a good working relationship with state division engineers, and so that was a positive thing that we discovered. This is, I know, sort of like drinking from the perennial fire hose and it's on spray. So we won't try and bury you in this stuff. Maybe we'll give this to you in what we hope are bite-sized pieces over the next couple of years as we go through the water court process. But we just want to bring you up to date as to where we are and let you know that we have settled the rules case with the state. So now we know basically not only what the rules specifically say, but what the rules, how they will apply those rules to the city and our plan for augmentation, and that was the purpose of the settlement. Now we can focus on the plan for augmentation and moving that forward.
Very good.
Good. Well, awesome. Well, with what little I know, I can sure say thank you for your work.
Thank you.
It's very interesting stuff.
Really?
You have a very interesting water system, as that map shows.
So cities are not considered senior water right users at all? There's no, what are we considered? What is a municipality considered?
Yeah, it doesn't have to do, it has nothing to do with the water user. The water user does not determine the priority or the seniority. The priority or the seniority is solely determined by the date of the water court application. So almost all wells are pretty junior. You think people came to San Luis Valley and they started going to water court to get decrees in the mid to late 1800s.
Right.
So people used water before then, but the water court system was established then. And so those irrigation and surface water rights are the most senior. The water court application does involve some changes of irrigation rights, and those changes, it's almost like they'll be used through the wells. So once they're changed and they're used for replacement of the well depletions, then the wells will, in a sense, have more senior water rights because they'll be diverting those senior irrigation rights, or they'll be actually using the senior irrigation water rights to replace their depletions, but they start working together.
Okay, thank you.
This becomes sort of a complicated paper accounting that, the water right's here, but we're actually using it over there, and we're pretending it's from over here, but we're coming out here over here, and it's going out that way.
Right.
But you probably heard the saying, first in time, first in right. And that is the essence of Colorado water law. The first person to appropriate water, take water out of the system and put it to a beneficial use has the most senior right. And of course the municipalities grew up after the agricultural community, and so their water rights are more junior.
I have a book I'm going to send you. I have a book I'll send you. Go ahead. Yes. Just thank you for your information. It's a very old book. You'll like it.
Good.
Yes, thank you very much. Any other questions?
Like I said, feel free to get on the phone, and Kate, you've got cards with you.
Yeah, I'm gonna get them out.
Cards, call either one of us anytime you have questions or anytime you want us to come down and address you. But in the meantime, we will make a point of getting a hold of Forrest and you, Mr. Mayor, anytime something significant happens. You know, we used to say water court moved at the speed of glaciers, but since the glaciers are retreating, it's not a very good analogy anymore. Maybe it is, actually. They don't move very fast. So when something significant happens, we'll let you know about it. But if you haven't heard from us and you're just curious, or you read something in the paper, or you run into somebody and they ask you a question about it, you go, I wonder what that means, what that's about. Feel free to just get a hold of us and we'll be happy to answer those questions. But if you haven't heard from us, it sort of means that we're just things are sort of moving along at, snail's pace, as one would normally expect. And with this trial coming up on the rules, that's going to tie up the water court through the end of February with trial, and then she'll have to write an opinion. And so I don't expect much of anything to happen for months and months. Everybody's going to be focused on this trial.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you much for the
Take
opportunity
care.
to represent you.
Appreciate you coming down. You doing the petition?
I am doing the petition for streetlights. Alrighty. Good evening. Just real quick, I just kind of want to go over how I go about my memos so you guys have a better understanding when I do present to council. What I'll do with the first part of the memo is describe any history that I have on whatever topic I want to discuss. I will then move into what the staff's recommendation is, which is what Public Works feels should happen. And then at the very end of a memo, I'll usually put, if it's something that needs a motion from council, I'll put an appropriate motion that if you do feel that it's something you want to make a motion on, you can do it and you actually have verbiage to use to try to ease the thing. But that's how I do all of my memos. So tonight, I received a petition requesting a street light in the alley of the 300 block of Faraday. The residents in the area feel that it is dark and have witnessed people in the area doing things that should not be done, such as peeping through windows, publicly urinating. This is actually the second time this request has been made for this area. This is the first time it's actually been in the form of a petition. We currently have an agreement with Xcel Energy that they install and maintain all of the streetlights in Monte Vista with the exception of those along Adams and along Highway 160 in the downtown. Those are metered and we pay for those and we have to maintain those lights. But all other lights within the city, we have to call Xcel and then they schedule to have them repaired as needed. We pay Xcel each month for those services. And as we are a customer of Xcel, we would have to submit an application and pay the associated fees with the installation of a new streetlight. We also, and this is a good important thing to think as far as budget, we also return the charges back to our customers, the residents of Monte Vista. If you look on your utility bill, there is a clause for street lighting. Okay. Unfortunately, a new light was not actually in the adopted budget for 2018. The estimated cost to install a new light would be in the $2,000 to $5,000 range upfront cost, depending on whether or not they have to add a pole in the area. And then a monthly service charge, which equals about $17 a month that we pay per light, okay? On January 15th, I spoke with the originator of the petition and we discussed her issues. And from having lived in the area myself, I would agree that the alleys are dark and would justify the street light. Approving this request does open doors for the rest of the town to make similar requests. Generally, street lights are on intersections of roads. There are very few street lights in alleys, and that's what this request is. Okay. We also have another standing request that I was informed of this week out on Sherman, right before our city limits ends, to install a streetlight out there. So, as this request was not received prior to the adoption of 2018, council would have to agree to a budget amendment to accommodate this petition. My recommendation is, knowing the area and what goes on in that area, Staff's recommendation would be to approve and instruct staff to install a streetlight, with the understanding that council would have to instruct staff to evaluate the budget and probably in most cases create a budget amendment to the existing 2018 budget to accommodate that. I also have in my recommendation that for next year's budget, it would be a good idea if during the budgeting process, if maybe we put some money into a budget for 1 or 2 additional streetlights per year. I also presented this to you in the form of a presentation. So if you would like to think on it a while, we can bring this back at the first meeting in February and actually make a formal decision. The Excel process will take a few months to go through the application and actually get into installation. Just so you have everything that you need.
I'm kind of curious, Chief, what are your thoughts on what impact this would have as far as crime goes?
This would be by the car wash off of Faraday.
So the night of the 17th, they stole the change bill machine out of the car wash. So the night before last.
They stole what?
Last night. The
What
bill
they steal?
changer, from the bill changer. It's about $3,000 in money and about $2,500 piece of equipment for the car wash. And there's really poor lighting there. Part of that is because of the car wash itself. They could use some updates that would be really helpful. There is a light right at the corner of Faraday and Grand.
Right.
And
Nothing all the way down. And this is an alley that doesn't just go straight through from one street to another. It actually comes off of Darwin, comes down, heads south, and then it makes a 90-degree corner and comes out behind the car wash, actually onto Faraday, before it never actually reaches 160. So it is kind of a weird little, and it's the 90 areas where they would there are 2 existing poles there. I haven't talked to Excel, so I don't know if either one of those poles would actually accommodate a street light. So
it could be a minimal charge if the poles.
it could be under $1,000 if it's just a light that needs to be installed. If they would have to do something to the pole to get it to retrofit a light in because of the added weight, or add another pole, then that cost can drastically go up. So.
And that was my question about the price range you guys is pretty wide, but that would be the reason. I guess we just need some more information about it.
Well, I have to actually apply. I have to submit the application to Excel. They will then have their engineers go inspect the site, and at that time they will assign a construction cost. Then once we have the construction cost, then I actually have hard dollars. The application will not be finalized until they receive a check for the construction cost.
How long would that take to get
The application I can do the application in a day. I mean, the application's not hard. It just depends on what they have as far as their workload and when they can get to it. A couple weeks generally, sometimes it can be a month.
And you mentioned that we need a budget, we have a budget issue, of course, but you also mentioned that is recovered from
If you look
the
in the
electric bill?
Yes, okay. If you look at the 2018 budget, there's a line item in there called street lighting. And street lighting is what we actually receive from our customers. You would also find a similar line item under the revenue side of your budget. And it's just basically a wash. There's $1,500 in there each year for us to maintain the lights on Adams and 160, but everything else is basically a wash. We receive money from our customers. We then in turn pay out to Excel Energy for those lighting costs.
So over a period of time, it is going to break even. It is going to pay for itself. Is that what you're
It will never pay for itself.
Okay.
Like I said, what we get in is right, and as long as they don't adjust their rates, it's exactly what our bills equal to for a 12-month period.
Okay.
There is no excess money that comes into that fund. So when you take, there should be 2 line items. One is our street lighting fee, and then one is our maintenance for our street lights that we're responsible for. Once you add those two line items, that's what we get from our utility bills.
Gotcha.
So with that, if you'd like, you can either make a motion, or if you'd like, I can bring it back to you at the next meeting for a formal motion and decision.
I'd say let's bring it back to the next meeting,
Yes, sir.
if you would, please.
Yep. And I'll bring you some ideas on the budget and try to have some prices, exact prices for you, okay? All right.
Thank you, Robert.
Yep. Since I'm on the agenda for the next item, go ahead and get situated. So bear with me just a second, I have some packets I want to hand out. Sir. Thank you, Rob. There you are. I'll give you an extra one, if you'd like to do whatever legalities you need, and you get to pay. All right, real quick, just to kind of go over, the packet I handed you is actually divided into two parts. Part one is stapled, and it is the memo that I'm going to read to you. And part two has got a little clip on it, and it actually says packet number 2. These are reference documents that will be referenced in packet 1. And this way, as we go through this, if you would like, you can then turn to the corresponding pages. The pages are handwritten and circled, so you can pull up the exact document that I'm referring to. All right, so with that, I'd like to go ahead and start my presentation with an analogy of how the government of the city of Monte Vista works. I believe it describes the functions of what we do and is important to items later in my presentation. City Council, if you will imagine you're an airliner flying at 50,000 feet. At your altitude, you can see both horizons. You can see the horizon of where we've been, Monte's past, and you can see the horizon of that's in front of you, Monte's future. The city manager is flying between the 10,000 and 20-foot level. The city manager can see the horizons, but can also see the mountains and the valleys. The manager can see the uphill struggles and the lush valleys that are in path to reach the new horizon. The department heads, we're flying at the 5,000 to 10,000 foot level, and we can see details. We see which passes are climbable to get over the mountains, and we can see which gullies need to be avoided. The remaining city employees are crop dusters. They're flying at the crop level, doing everything they can to make sure the crop is not overran with weeds and that we actually have a harvest. They do this so there's an actual harvest to keep us moving towards the horizon. To take that analogy and apply it in real life, what does it mean? This book right here. This book is your airliner. This is the Monte Vista Municipal Code. It's a collection of ordinances and resolutions, basically policies. It includes the original city charter from our forefathers and items from every council that has ever sat in your seats. It will also include all of your decisions while you are in the term of your office. It's a living, breathing document. You will find that during your term of office, there are policies in this document that you either dislike or ones that interfere with your vision of where the city needs to go. You may also find that there are items that are not covered by this book. In all of these cases, you now have the authority to make change. Through a simple majority approval of your ordinances and resolutions, you will enact the policies that take the city of Monte Vista in the direction that you envision, your horizon. Likewise,
The city manager has the authority through you to make policies that govern the daily operations of the city. The same applies for the department heads. We are authorized through the city manager to create policies. Our policies are more specific to our individual departments and the department uses. It takes all of the aircraft, or all of us, flying together in order to reach the horizon or the goal for City of Monte Vista. Sometimes that doesn't happen. On January 4th, 2018, at the council meeting, the finance director made some statements that implied unethical conduct and the misappropriation of taxpayer dollars by various persons and departments within the city. And while no names were actually given, the statements did provide enough information that she created enough innuendo that would direct some to the Public Works Department. Normally, it is my policy to let people say what they want and just to continue to move forward with what we do. I have in fact instructed my staff not to say anything on social media the times when they have been offended. You see, Public Works, as a described department, is not a sexy department. We do work that does not make headlines. As a society, we all expect that when we turn on our faucets, we get water. Not only do we get water, but water that is safe for human consumption. We also expect that when we flush our toilets, we expect the waste to go away. Very few actually ever take into account the work that is necessary to produce potable water or carry and treat wastes. Public Works does that work. We don't make the front page of the paper the 364 days a year that when faucets are turned on, people get water, but we do make headlines during that one day when there is a leak and the water is turned off so repairs can be made. Usually the media just explains that the water will be off for repairs, but generally there is no follow-up. Once the water has been restored, the problem is over and it's really not newsworthy. I hope you noticed I stated the problem is over because I didn't use it in the sense that the repair was made and those that made the repair went home safely. I made it in the sense that the problem was actually the inconvenience the customers had for not having water. Again, if you're trying to get to the big city for an appointment and come up on a work zone with flaggers, I doubt any of us had the first thought of, oh goody, they're going to stop traffic so they can work in a safe environment and we too can remain safe. I bet for all of us, the first thought is a little bit different. Public Works and those trades that encompasses Public Works usually only make headlines for something that is construed as bad. We do make headlines for good things, the opening of a park or the Arbor Day celebration, but we're usually in the background. I and the staff of Public Works are good with that, usually. There are times when people make remarks that hit us and they offend us. Usually, when my crew are offended, I instruct them to be silent and for goodness sake, don't get involved in the social media garbage that takes place. I also instruct them to talk to their significant others to also refrain from making comments on social media, usually. But on January 4th, all of that changed. There is no way that I can instruct my staff on being silent when I knew within a few minutes of the finance director's report that I would not remain silent. She chose to describe widespread corruption and theft and a general misuse of taxpayers' dollars. As I know everyone that works at the city, I found her remarks extremely offensive. The finance director repeatedly mentioned that in her status as a CPA was her ethical reasons for making those statements. I too have 3 letters that follow my name, and they're CWP. Those letters and what they represent also have a set of ethical behavioral standards that I must follow. They too include fiscal responsibility, with the added responsibility for the health and welfare of our consumers, which in this case is anyone that drinks Monte Vista water. As a CWP, which stands for Colorado Certified Water Professional, I am required to withhold Regulation 100 and must meet the standards set by that regulations and the standards set in Section 25-9-101 through 110 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. I was required to meet a set of standards and pass tests that prove my skill level, and I must achieve a certain number of advanced educational credits to retain my certifications, very similar to what a CPA must do. The state of Colorado has 5 distinct classifications, and I hold a license in 4 of the 5 classifications: water treatment, water distribution, and wastewater collection. Below are definitions from Regulation 100 to better describe the qualifications that I hold. Board means that the Water and Wastewater Facility Operator Certification Board, created by Section 25-9-103 Colorado Revised Statutes. Certificate means the certificate of competency issued by the board, stating that the operator named thereon has met the requirements for the specified classification of the certification program. And 3, the certified operator means any person who has the responsibility for the operation of any water or wastewater facility and is certified as a Colorado water professional. There are several people in this room that hold very similar certificates that I hold. In fact, one of the individuals here holds the highest in 4 disciplines that you can actually obtain in the state of Colorado. He is your ORC. He's your operator in responsible charge. Unlike what the finance director did on January 4th, I am following proper protocols and have legally requested present to council. Sorry. And unlike the finance director's unsupported statements, I intend to prove that in reference to the statements that created the innuendo of Public Works, that at best her statements are half-truths, and in some cases may be downright false. So with that said, I will begin. Her first allegation was there was unethical shop use which created a serious liability to the city. First, it is true, Public Works employees have the benefit and have limited use of the city shop. Let me explain. I was hired in March of 2012. One of the many items that the then city manager and I discussed was he suspected unauthorized shop use. Being new and not knowing any of the existing employees, I decided my first course of action was to simply ask the employees if they use the shop. They answered that question with a simple yes. But it's because we have to use our personal tools to complete city jobs. It says a little bit about their integrity. I ended the use of the shop at that time, and over the course of the next 11 months, I evaluated the amount of times that the employees used their personal tools to complete work at the city. I was actually amazed. I will read to you a memo that I sent to the city manager on February 21st, 2013. During most of our crew meetings, someone brings up the idea of shop use. And finally, at the February crew meeting, I told the guys if they want it that bad, to write a letter to you requesting shop use. Today, that letter was submitted and signed by all the staff of Public Works, and I too signed that letter. I know when you hired me, we discussed, you thought the staff was using the shop. At the time it was discussed, it was not an appropriate use, as this is not something available to the residents. I understood this argument, and I asked the guys, and they admitted to using the shop, to which I told them to stop. They all complied. Later, I found out that they thought the shop use was in exchange for them using personal tools and such to complete jobs for the city. Over the past year, I've been evaluating, and I must say I'm saddened by the amount of time someone has needed to run home to get a tool, or in one case, a vehicle to complete a project. I had requested money to purchase tools, but due to budget constraints, it was cut in the very first round. Even with what was requested, I doubt it would eliminate the need for personal use entirely. The use of personal items has ranged from wrenches to an ATV with the heavy snowstorm in December. The use was either from not having the right size wrench or a particular saw, or in the case of an ATV, due to the city equipment failure. In all cases, it was in the middle of a project and the use was required to complete the project. Monte Vista has financial issues that it will need to address in the upcoming years, especially in the Public Works Department. The need outweighs the available resources. I don't see a clear way to cut above to solve all of our problems in the near future. The employees of Public Works, and I think the city in general, recognize this, and to their credit, are willing to do what it takes to keep things working. I have changed my mind, and after working with the guys, I think limited use of shop, as requested, is an appropriate activity for the employees. They have shown to me their commitment to the city by using their own tools, and I think that it's only fair to allow them to use the shop. I fully support their request and am writing this memo to also ask for your support in allowing the limited use of Public Works shop during non-working hours. Under circumstances, it feels like the appropriate action. That's on page 1 of packet number 2, if you'd like to look at that memo. Over the next couple of months, I worked with the city manager and the human resource coordinator to develop a policy allowing for the city shop use in exchange for their personal tools. Attached is the final version of that policy that went to the crews. That's on page 2. And while things are better to this day, it is still necessary for the employees to use personal tools to complete city jobs. You are currently sitting in one of those rooms, one of those projects. A few years back, while under the direction of an interim city manager, it was decided by council that the old council chambers were not effective. So a project was created to make a new council chambers. You're sitting in that room today. There was not sufficient budget to cover both the demolition and the remodel for that room, so Public Works was asked to handle the demolition side of things. We deal with water, wastewater, and streets, not your typical construction demolition job. So we did not have the proper tools to complete the task, nor is it fiscally responsible to purchase tools and equipment for a one-time need. So I told all of the Public Works staff to bring anything they have at home that we could use to complete the job. These included hammers, saws, bars, and such. The room you were sitting was once a hallway and 3 office spaces. If you look up, you'll see where the old walls used to be. The finance director also said it created a serious liability. So at the time of the policy, a waiver of liability was also created, and each employee that wanted to use the shop had to sign it. That's on page 3. She also stated that she had concerns with the misuse of consumables. In fact, she stated that it would be impossible if they, the employees, were not using consumables, and as such, Public Works are thieves. The policy document strictly prohibits that. We also have a security camera system at the shop, so I know exactly who enters the gate and the building at all times, as well as what's going on inside the service bays. The DVR and monitor are located in my old office, which is now the street supervisor office, and is under lock and key. At first, the employees were required to sign in and notify me when they're planning on using the shop. The sign-in sheet is not used much anymore, but the employees still notify me when they plan to use the shop. The new mechanic and I had a conversation shortly after his hire that covered the filters. It was decided to only keep a few necessary filters on hand at any one time. So he returned the old wall of filters to Napa and now only keeps a select few filters for the police cars and the sweeper. All other filters and oils are purchased at the time of service. Auditors are usually looking to ensure that there are proper controls in place to prevent misuse, and those were addressed first in 2013, and they are continue to be addressed and improved on today. In your packets, you have my memo to the city manager, the policy document, the waiver of liability, and the supporting emails to the process that actually took place, including the memo between the existing human resource coordinator and myself when this came up again last year. Nothing was and is not hidden. I hope that based on the facts that I'm supplying, that you now see that the use of the shitty shop is not an underhanded, unethical activity, but in fact, an existing policy based on a concentrated effort to conserve taxpayers' dollars and not the misappropriation of taxpayer funds that the finance director alleged on January 4th. Those pages are numbered 4 through 10. The next allegation the finance director stated was that the city purchases tools for the mechanics to keep. That statement is not entirely true, and it is definitely not the way she implied. The city has one mechanic that is responsible for the entire fleet. The fleet includes vehicles from the Recreation Department, Kids Connection, the Motor Pool, the Police Department, and Public Works. The mechanic is a direct report to me. When the city hired the mechanic, we required that he supplied his own tools. It would simply be cost prohibitive to purchase a set of professional mechanics' tools. Requiring mechanics to supply their own tools is actually an industry standard. Most businesses that employ mechanics also provide a tool allowance, very similar to what the city provides in the uniform allowance for our employees, and those are used to cover the cost of broken tools. Monte Vista does not have such an allowance. There is a standard operating procedure that if the mechanic breaks one of his personally owned tools, then upon him providing proof that a tool is broken, then the city would replace that particular tool. Proof of a broken tool is to provide me with the tool, and once that I determine that it is indeed broken, I authorize him to replace the tool with a similar tool. Most of the time, I keep the tool for a period of time before disposing of. I've extended that procedure to all of the employees as we have slowly improved the tools owned by the city. When a tool breaks, they must show it to me before prior authorization is given to purchase new tools. Tools that are most generally broken are small drill bits, screwdriver bits, and ratchets. The ratchets that we have started purchasing are Craftsman, so they have a lifetime warranty. For the purposes of tonight's presentation, I brought a box of broken tools, and they're here. They include items that are extremely expensive. The hammer went out of this. Ones that are small, but no more, less expensive, snap-on air ratchet. All the way down to your small drill bits. Okay? It's not an underhanded practice. The next allegation that she stated was the use of city-owned vehicles to commute back and forth to work. What the finance director failed to mention to you on January 4th is that there are policies that provide allowances for city use. The police and public works have employees that take vehicles home. And while I cannot speak to the police side of things, I can address the public works side of things. There are 4 vehicles that are assigned to employees that are classified as essential personnel. One is my vehicle. The nature of my job requires me to be available 24/7. I do not get snow days, and the expectation of my job is to respond when called. My street supervisor has the same. The utility supervisor is the operator in responsible charge of our utility system, and he has the final authority in regards to the water and wastewater system. Regulation extends his authority above even that of council. The final vehicle is the vehicle used by the on-call person. This person is responsible for all after-hour calls. She also stated that she found in the code a provision that prohibits the use of city vehicles for commuting purposes. What she failed to mention to the city council and to the public was that same provision has an exemption clause. Let me quote for you the actual provision in the City of Monte Vista Personnel Rules and Regulations Manual, Resolution number 5, 2015. And I quote, "Employees are not permitted under any circumstance to use a city vehicle to commute back and forth to work. This policy is in place to keep the city of Monte Vista in compliance with the Internal Revenue Service policy on automobile usage. The only employees exempt from this policy are police officers driving a well-marked police car and the public works employees that is on call and any other employee as designated by the city manager. Employees with an authorized take-home vehicle will be subject to the appropriate IRS regulations concerning the tax implications of this benefit. Copies of the 2015 personnel rules and regulation manuals that cover this are in your packets, as well as the same document from 2009. To show council that these are established policies, they are not new policies, and have been in place longer than myself or the current city manager have been employed by the city. They are actual policies, and again, not what the finance director stated as unethical conduct or the misappropriation of taxpayer dollars. Those are pages 11 through 16. The next topic that the finance director brought up was on call, and the fact that it is fiscally irresponsible to pay employees time and a half to sit at home. This is probably the most inflammatory statement of the night, at least for the employees that have actually experienced on call. Regardless, I would also like to explain this one as well. In the very same City of Monte Vista Personnel Rules and Regulations Manual, Resolution number 5, 2015, that we just touched on, in Part 3, Employee Compensation, Scheduled on Call, Non-Exempt. Again, I quote, "In some departments, on-call responsibility is assigned by the supervisor department in a 7-day period to ensure that qualified staff are available, if needed after regular business hours at night, Monday through Friday, and on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and holidays. Employees assigned this responsibility must respond to calls within a reasonable time frame as set by department policy." In my department, that's 30 minutes to the residents. Compensation for this on-call duty shall be 1 hour at 1.5 times the employee's normal hourly rate for each workday, and 4 hours at 1.5 times for each weekend day. Hours actually worked in excess of 1 hour on a workday and/or 4 hours on a weekend or holiday will accrue at 1.5 times compensation time or overtime if the employee has actually worked 40 hours in that work week. Employees are expected to be prepared to perform assigned job duties at all times during the standby period. Employees who have unavailable for emergency call-out or are incapable of performing the assigned duties may be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. However, if the employee has become ill or injured and as a result is unable to meet the call-out expectations, it is the employee's responsibility to notify his or her immediate supervisor so a substitution can be found. That's page 17 of your packet. Again, this is a policy. What it actually means in real-time practice is the person on call must respond to any call through dispatch to any resident's business for any reason within 30 minutes. If an owner has a leak at 2 a.m. and needs the water off, the on-call person responds and better be there by 2:30. The first hour of their weekday after hours is paid by the 1 hour on call. That equates to 2 on-call service calls that they have to respond to. Weekends and holidays the on-call is paid for 4 hours. They're not sitting at home. What's covered in those 4 hours is the on-call person must check all of the well pumps and record the chlorine levels and the daily pump meter reading, as well as the pumping rates. They are also required to check the sewage lift stations to ensure they are functioning properly. If there is a problem, they diagnose and they correct the issue. If there are no issues, then this can take approximately 2 hours. The remaining 2 hours is in the event of any other call-outs. Emergency calls are recorded and turned in after each evening or on Monday for a weekend to the utility supervisor in the event that a follow-up is necessary. They are expected to complete a normal work week, and any scheduled time off during the on-call counts against them getting overtime outside of what is allowed per policy. I have included a list of calls on the on-call person has responded to since January 4th, and that's on page 18. And if you look at that page, you will see that the call-outs range for that 2-week period from 7 a.m. to 11:30 at night. Normally, during this time of the year, when it's cold, those calls go into 2, 3 a.m., and they still have to respond. The finance director then turned her attention to the policies and specifically payroll. In regards to this, I have to totally agree. Payroll has been a mess for a while, definitely over the past 10 months or so. So much so that we threw out the old payroll system and then have installed a new system with the #1 payroll firm in the nation, and we're still experiencing issues similar to the one we had with the old system. People are still being shorted on their paychecks. The leave time is a mess, and so on. I think we're making headway, but it is still a frustration for the employees. She talked briefly about salaried employees abusing time. As no names were mentioned, she talked briefly about, I cannot address it, excuse me. As no names were mentioned, I cannot address this, but we'll say salaried employees are exempt in our handbook, meaning that we are not eligible to receive overtime. Yes, we are expected to work 40 hours a week, but I will say that for every exempt employee, we work nights, weekends, and holidays, none of which is actually paid to us. We are paid to do a job, and we do that job. And regardless if it's a man or a woman, our work week far exceeds 40 hours. The final item that I feel compelled to discuss that was brought up by the finance director is nepotism. And while she said she wanted to speak about this in an executive session, I would also like to address, but I see no reason to address it in private. I believe there is a misunderstanding of nepotism and being related. Monte Vista and the Valley are small rural areas that prides itself on having multiple generation families still living here. It is important enough that it is brought up at every discussion involving economic development. People are saddened by the fact that our young folks feel that they must leave the valley in order to be successful. If you look around the city of Monte Vista, there are several people related to someone else that works at the city. You've had sisters, currently have brothers, have a mom and a daughter, and a husband and a wife. And if you really wanted to criticize, you could start looking into cousins, all working at the city of Monte Vista, and this statement is probably accurate for most of the communities within the valley. Nepotism is not the same as being related. And I believe that it's being misconstrued as the same thing in the finance director's report on January 4th. Nepotism is defined in the same policy manual that I've been using all night as, I quote, nepotism, a relative of an employee shall not be considered for full-time or part-time employment by the city of Monte Vista in circumstances where A, one relative directly or indirectly would exercise supervisory, appointment, or dismissal authority or disciplinary action over the other relative. One relative would audit, verify, receive, or be entrusted with monies received by or handled by the other relative. C, one relative has access to the city of Monte Vista's confidential information, including personnel records. And no relative, D, of city officials, appointed or elected, may work for the city of Monte Vista. However, if an employee has been working for the city for at least 1 year and a relative is either elected to city council, The employee will be allowed to continue his or her employment with the city. The policy goes on to describe relatives and has an exemption clause. The actual policy are also included in your packet, page 19 and 20. I also included the one from 2009 for your comparison. You'll see it's been a long-standing policy. I believe that my relationship with another coworker is what she referenced in her report, so I want to address this. It is no secret that I am married to the city clerk. We are spouses and we have been married for 28 years. We have never made it a secret that we are married. She accompanies to every event that is held in the city and has come to every Christmas party the city has had. There is no one at the city, to include the city manager or previous city council, that had any doubt to our relationship. I was hired by the city in 2012 and she was hired in 2017, about the same time as the finance director. If you look at the organizational chart of the city, which is dated 4/2016, you will see how the structure of the city is formed. I would request that council turn to page 21. At the top, you'll see the citizens of Monte Vista, then the mayor and city council. Off of that line are 3 additional lines. They are the city manager, the city attorney, and the municipal judge. Those 3 positions are direct reports to the mayor and city council. These people answer directly to you. Off of the box that says city manager, you will also see 6 total boxes that represent department heads. We are direct reports to the city manager. You will notice that 5 of those boxes are equal and means that no one department head has any more authority than any other. We are viewed as equals. Everyone else answers to one of the department heads. If you'll cast your attention to the dotted line coming off the box of mayor and city council, you'll see a caption that says appoints with limited supervision, to a solid line coming off of the city managers, but not connected to any of the other boxes that represent department heads. It is a standalone position that has 1 employee and is basically a hybrid position. The position is appointed by council, and as such, council has limited supervision, but the position also has a direct reporting responsibility to the city manager. That position is the city clerk. So using the organizational chart under normal circumstances at the city, there is absolutely no chance that the city and the clerk and I could be accused of nepotism, as none of the 4 conditions that define nepotism actually exist. However, when the city manager became ill and was unable to fill his duties, there was what some could perceive as nepotism, and I also want to address that. When the city manager became ill unexpectedly in December of 2016, City Council appointed joint authority for city operations to the Human Resource Coordinator for personnel and to myself for daily operations. Those resolutions are also included in your packet, pages 22 and 23. A few months later, after the city manager had come back, but again illness prevented him from continuing in his position, another meeting was held in which I was given full authority as the acting city manager. Prior to the acceptance of that burden, I submitted an email, which is in your packet, clearly stating that the perception of nepotism must be dealt with prior to my accepting the task. City Council chose to place the city clerk under the direction of the Human Resource Coordinator. While there is no resolutions to this, I did include in your packets my email in regards to the situation, the mayor's email to the employees, pages 24 through 31. It was a difficult time in the city. Again, even with the issues and the chaos that was going on, I was aware of the perception of nepotism, and I required City Council to take, and thankfully, they did take the appropriate steps to make sure there was none. The city clerk was never a direct report to me, nor did any of the other conditions that ever exist for someone to be able to call out nepotism. It simply did not exist. The other time I could possibly think somebody could claim nepotism and one that may have created a morale issue within the city, was when the city clerk called the front desk to get me as I was not answering my phone. The only thing she did not announce was why she needed me, and that was because the wildlife officer and the police officers did not have my cell phone number, and I did not answer my cell as I was in a meeting. If you remember that day was the day of the bear cub in the tree over behind Stars. The newspaper can verify that her calling was work-related, as the picture in the paper shows me running the controls of the boom truck so the officer could use both hands on the bear cub. Tonight, I put myself and my department in the spotlight to combat what was said by the finance director at the January 4th council meeting. The reason I did this is because she stood on a principle of an ethical obligation to bring forth unethical conduct and the misappropriation of taxpayer dollars. While she did not mention any names, she said enough for anyone to know that my department was involved. Public opinion is bad enough, drain the swamp, without adding fuel to an existing fire. It's not what she said that I have problems with. It's how she implied and stated there is widespread deceit and dishonest practices taking place within the city of Monte Vista, and that she alone, due to her professional ethical standards, was forced to take a stand, and it's simply not true. I know of no professional ethics that approve of misrepresentation information, deceitfully claiming something is unethical when it is actually a legal policy, and in one instance referring that the employees are actually committing theft. I work with the men and women here in Monte Vista. I see them day in and day out work their butts off. Many of them working into the night and not claiming the hours they actually work for fear of being chastised for having overtime. I also represent the men of Public Works, men that I've unthawed meters and water lines in 30 below weather with. Been in trenches during sub-zero nights, completely wet, and 1,000 other unpleasant conditions. Men that normally take the mean and nasty comments in silence. But I cannot advise them to remain silent, as I myself have no intention of being silent when someone's claim go to an illegal action or implies unethical conduct, especially knowing that those men have to face from the public claims from someone that has never even stepped into Public Works or for any other department for that matter. Claim that all they do is sit at home and get paid for it, and that when they do work, they're unethical and they misuse taxpayer dollars. They deserve far better than that. They deserve the credit for what they do, for the times they're outside in freezing temperatures. They deserve to know that people appreciate the fact that they provide clean, safe water to consume, and they deserve my voice. And tonight you heard my voice, and rightly you may hear their voices as well. What happened on January 4th was wrong. You had an employee stand in front of you telling you a story of unethical conduct and the misuse of funds citywide. A story that was jumped on as fact by the public and covered in media as allegations, but important enough to be on front page. And now I stand here and I just proved to you that none of what she said, none of it was unethical, none of it was a misuse of taxpayer dollars, but instead they're policies. Policies you may or may not agree with, but in no shape or form are they unethical conduct or misuse of taxpayer dollars. They're in place to conserve our little funds that we have. Tonight I did something that the finance director failed to do on January 4th, and that is to provide facts as to what is actually happening. It's not unethical conduct or misappropriation of taxpayer dollars. It's just the opposite. We're doing what we're charged to do, and that is to carrying out the policies and procedures that were enacted by the city councils and the city managers, and doing our best to conserve those taxpayers' dollars. And I'm sorry, I do get emotional about it. It is important. My men work hard. They work in conditions when most people stay covered up in their beds, and they're outside, and they deserve better than that. I will close tonight with a quote from Paul Harvey, and now you know. the rest of the story.
Thank you, Rob. Okay. Before we get to citizen comments, I just spent 2 days at a meeting from where I work, and it's about safety. We drive home safety, 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 safety. And it's passion, and it's gotta be a passion. You live it. Our motto is, they come to work safe, they go home safe. They go home, they come to work whole, they go home whole. And I see that right here. Citizen comments. Okay, we welcome your unscheduled comments. Please limit it to 3 minutes. And we will have a timer up. We have 3. Bobby Beta.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I just have a few things to say about utilities. I might repeat some of the stuff that Rob already said. But first of all, I want to say that the guys in Public Works, they're very upset with all the allegations that were made against them. But being professionals that they are, they held their head up and are taking care of business as usual, and I commend them for that. Second of all, I want to say that I support Rob in all the decisions he makes. From day one, he has always been for what is best for the city and for Public Works to make it as efficient and productive as possible. Not only does he take care of Public Works, but he's also helping the other departments when he can. With that being said, I want to touch a little bit on utilities real quick. Allegations were made that all we do is ride around. Our citizens turn the faucet on, water comes out, they flush the toilet, everything goes away. Everything is fine and dandy. But they do not realize what it takes to make that happen. I mean, we have 5 wells or pumps, 2 emergency motors that we maintain. We have a little over 30 miles of distribution pipe to maintain and repair as needed. We have over 2,000 meters that are read and repaired. We are not as fortunate as some municipalities that have radio read. The guys have to physically go to each one of these meters and read them. Also, there is over 30 miles of sewer pipe that has to be maintained and repaired as needed, plus 4 lift stations. After the sewage leaves the house, I bet a lot of people don't know where it goes. We have 2 wastewater facilities, which is very unique for a small city like Monte Vista. They are a 7-day operation that takes a tremendous amount of work to run and maintain. Especially now that Proximity Mall is discharging to the Veterans Plant. The work has doubled out there. The city of Monte Vista is the only city in the valley that does our own testing that the CDPHE requires, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, which saves the city tens and thousands of dollars. All the other cities contract out to the San Diego Crystal Laboratories in Alamosa. The CDPHE has a lot of rules and regulations that have to be met and followed, which is a job by itself. We offer 24 hours of on-call service. Allegations were made that the guys sit at home and collect payment on call. Our citizens do not see when the guys are out at 1 o'clock in the morning and below zero weather trying to thaw a frozen meter or trying to find a curb stop to turn a water on or off or repairing a water main. The saying goes, out of sight, out of mind. I just have a couple more things. Which brings me to the allegations of city use, vehicle use to commute back and forth from work. I myself am one of those persons. I am on call 24/7, so is the street supervisor. I am the ORC, operator and responsible charge of the community water supply, the distribution and collection, and both wastewater plants. If anything happens, the state requires me to be on site assessing and fixing the problem. It's my licenses that are on the line. The guys on call have 30-minute response time. We have guys that live in Bountiful, Center, Alamosa, Crestone, and I myself from Del Norte, and of course from here. If anything happens, it doesn't make any sense to go start your vehicle and let it warm up 5-10 minutes, drive to a public workshop, open the gate, start your work truck, let it warm up another 5-10 minutes, and then go find out what's going on. If you're wondering what can possibly go wrong, not only do they respond to concerns that citizens may have, and just to name a couple of things, if there's a water main break, water shooting out everywhere, it could be disastrous. If one of the pumps go down and the pressure in the distribution system goes below 20 psi, that's a violation and opens up a whole can of worms with the state. If there is a sewer plug and sewage is pouring into a house or out of a manhole, which is an SSO, sanitary sewer overflow, which again is a violation and a whole can of worms with the state. If a chlorinator goes down and the chlorine residual falls below a 0.2 in the distribution system, another violation. I admit that it doesn't happen very often, knock on wood, but what does that say about the guys? The guys are doing their job and we're on top of things. But all it takes is that one time and we can get into a bunch of trouble. Again, if anything happens, the state doesn't go to the mayor or to Forrest or to Rob. They go to me because I'm the ORC. To me, using the city vehicle is not a benefit, it's a necessity. There's a tremendous amount of work that the guys do and does not get recognized. Everything we do, there is a reason for it, and everything we do is not unethical. With all that being said, I just want to say that as for me being a supervisor, I couldn't ask for a better bunch of guys to work with. Thank you.
Anthony Guerrero.
Good evening. Congratulations to the new members and to the new mayor. I just thought it was important to formally introduce myself since I'll be here throughout your terms and just explain what my role is and what it is not in regards to being in these chambers. First of all, as I say, I am a news reporter. I am not a city employee of the city government of Monte Vista, and I am not a press secretary to the city government of Monte Vista. With that being said, I'm still happy to be in here to celebrate awards and all that you guys may hand out and take those pictures as we always have. That is entirely up to you. I'm not always going to be your favorite person. That is probably already clear. I don't know, but that's just the nature of my job and the nature of your job. But I'm accountable to the public and anything that is said in here. I was accountable a few weeks ago. I'm accountable today to Mr. Vance and all his crew. So that will definitely be reported. I also want to just remind everyone that has taken the oath of office that if you talk to us in a public forum, it is, from our perspective, public record from here on out. Our Facebook page, Valley Publishing, is not the actual newspaper. Just to clarify that, the actual newspaper is the Monte Vista Journal. That is really all I want to say. Just kind of introduce myself and give those facts to you. Thank you, and look forward to having a positive relationship.
Thank you.
Mr. Bob Gailey. Join us.
Thank you very much for just let me say something. I want to formally invite the council and everyone listening on the 25th of this month at 5:30 at the Annex Building next to the county courthouse. Your Rotary Club, along with other civic organizations within our county, but mostly Monte Vista, will be providing the Rio Grande Sheriff's 7 new security vest, bulletproof vest. They're state-of-the-art. They're $1,400 a piece. They only weigh 3.5 pounds, and they can stop a .308 round at 10 feet. It's amazing technology. But it was all started through the Rotary, and we're glad that other agencies and other community groups stepped up. Calvary Baptist, Gateway Baptist, the South Fork Kiwanis, and also the Eastern Stars, all purchased vests that we can make this presentation. We hope to do more for the other communities, but it's all based upon this 616, Shield 616 company out of Colorado Springs. And after what just recently happened in northern Colorado to some of our sheriff's deputies, I think all of our police departments, especially in small towns, need to have the best equipment and not hand-me-down equipment. And so we're very proud to do this. I'm inviting you guys, the county trustees and the city councils, both Del Norte and South Fork, and we hope that you can attend. Inside every single vest, on the inside, is Ephesians 6:16. And it says, in addition to all this, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish the flaming arrows of the evil one. I think one of the things that give our officers faith is community support. And so I just invite you to that evening to be part of that.
And what time was that again?
5:30. 5:30 on the 25th.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor.
Is there any other public comment? Public hearings. Liquor license. Anita?
Good evening, Council, and welcome, Kathleen. Thank you. So I have one liquor license renewal in front of you tonight. It is for the Mountain View Restaurant, and they have not had any violations in the last year, and they have reported and supplied all paperwork necessary for their renewal. So I ask that council approve the renewal for the liquor license for the Mountain View Restaurant.
I move to approve the liquor license for Antojitos Incorporation doing business as Mountain View Restaurant at 2099 Sherman Avenue, Monte Vista, Colorado, 81144.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Anita?
Councilor Segala?
Aye.
Councilor Johnson?
Aye.
Councilor Slaybaugh?
Aye.
Councilor Ellithorpe?
Aye.
And Mayor Becker?
Aye. We're moving right to staff reports. City manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Welcome aboard, Councilor.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd just like to say I appreciate Mr. Vance's and Mr. Beta's words this evening, and also a large group of the Public Works employees are here this evening, and I too appreciate that they work very hard for our community. We don't pay as well as a lot of people do. That's a fact. Wish we could, and we're trying to turn things around, and I'm looking forward to the leadership of this council to work on some of those issues. I'd like to pay them better, but a lot of these guys stuck with us a long time. They know their business, and they're very professional, and I was glad to hear that illuminated this evening. I wrote some notes that I can't read, which is always great. One of the things, and you'll have a lot of going to the water attorneys' presentations. there's lots of moving parts to that, and I've been involved with that since I've been here, and, they're doing a great job. And we've made some really good headway that I'll get you a copy of that stipulations that they were able to negotiate with the state. So we're actually sitting in a pretty good place. In my layman's terms, if you looked at that chart they showed, we actually have a good amount of water, assuming that the water court agrees with that. And there's no indication that they wouldn't. Our engineering sub-consultants, Bicus Water Engineering, which is now part of SGM, Schmoiser, something, I can't do the whole name. But they've done a really good job, and we've gotten a lot of detailed work out of that, so we actually know where we stand very well. Part of the plan that we have for the future in our water as we get augmentation is to take some of the ditch right we have and water the golf course with it. Because that's not, we wouldn't even have to change the use of that. That's irrigation, essentially, as I understand it. So that is something, there's some mechanics to put that in place. We also have an unused well that's on the east side of the golf course that used to be used for the football field. Between the two of those, we could actually use quite a bit of that in season to water the golf course. So that is one of the plans that's actually in our augmentation plan. And as they indicated, they worked really hard to get our aug plan filed, even though we knew it would be years potentially before the court got there, so it gets us in the door pretty early. So that's pretty exciting. One of the things that I wanted to add to my report tonight, we haven't kind of finished analyzing Waste Management's request for automatic increases based on the index, and honestly, I've been a little preoccupied with other things. But one thing I did want to bring up, during that discussion when they were here last week, they talked about the financial infeasibility of recycling. And I understand that as a commodity discussion. But I will point out to you that our other franchise holder, MDS, out of Creed, they're not really particularly a huge hauler. But some of you may know this, and I was at the landfill, I think it was last Saturday, or the week before, I think it was last Saturday. Anyway, I'm like, oh yeah, here's a brochure, and oh, you know what? They do have curbside recycling. Now they provide it as a premium. Their basic trash service is $16 per month for a weekly pickup. For additional $9, the customer can pay for recycling, and they pick that up every 2 weeks. Customers can also just get recycling for $16 a month, even if they don't have their trash service. So I know that with the prior council, and Councilor Slaybach can attest to this, this is one of the early discussions we had with Waste Management when their prior contract was enacted. It was about recycling. I realize there's difficulties to that. But I do wonder, and just as a point of discussion with the council, is if you may not want to do the automatic rate increase thing and continue to press them into looking at the recycling. I realize it poses some difficulties to them as a carrier, but it was something that was, I was here when we had those discussions initially, and I feel like while there is the economic discussion, if little old MDS can do it, I know they're not making money doing it, the recycling, but they provide the service. So that's just an item for the council to consider as we look forward on that. I will try to get that index reviewed by the second meeting of February and let you know how relevant we think it is from our own analysis. But I do think that the recycling piece is kind of important. Also included in your packet is the Upper Rio Grande Economic Development Annual Report. I'm not going to go into any detail other than you take a look at it. As you know, we are investor members, the city is, in that effort. I will be sometime in the next month or so bringing an idea to talk to the council about regarding some more proactive economic development efforts. I think that URGED has done a nice job with what they're doing. But we have had prior discussions with the prior council, particularly about do we get the actual focus we need for our community, and they're not really set up to do that. So there are some ideas afloat and some folks I'm talking to right now, and I hope to be able to bring that to council, probably that second meeting in February. But maybe for a more directive kind of activity. So I'll keep you informed on that as that goes along. And that's all I have this evening, unless you have any questions.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Karen?
Mayor and councilors, I don't have anything that I can actually report on in public for at this time, so I'll figure I'll just pass on mine, hopefully have something next month for you, unless you have any specific questions of me, basically. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? No. Chief Rosecrans.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Pretty quick report tonight. I'm not even really going to go over any specifics. Just kind of showing you I'm continuing my networking, building training, kind of not rebuilding the department, but kind of trying to figure out the department and putting emphasis where I think it's needed. The CERT team is one of those. It's kind of like our mini SWAT team. It's an incident response team. So I have 4 pretty active members of that. They just did some training, and they're working also with Alamosa, kind of big brother, in case things really get weird. So doing some training. The Minister of Allowance invited me to come talk to them about some funding and some emergencies in some emergency situations. We kind of worked through that with Bob and some of the other pastors, Wayne and everybody. We talked about year-end numbers last meeting. Not really going to bring those up, but I'd be happy to get them to you, or maybe you have access to them.
I already have it.
Beautiful. And then I'm still trying to work with Facebook, trying to add things to that without getting myself in trouble. But I think it's working. Ezrael's helping me out, and I've been trying to read on the do's and the don'ts. And I think it's kind of helping me kind of get out in a timely manner what people want to see. Not all of it's good news, and that's kind of my philosophy. I'm not going to hold back what I can put out there, and I think that's kind of good and bad, because there's some things going on out there that we need to fix, and that's going to take us all, and that's what we keep saying, we being this group. So I think it's good to put it out there, and one of those just happens to fall on that fair day. I didn't even know about that request, and yet they stole the change machine last night. So it is about lights and visibility and saying something if you see something. That's a really odd spot for them to be out there, probably 30 to 45 minutes, maybe even an hour, drilling out those locks. They had to go through 2 padlocks, a main door lock, several bolts had to be sheared off with a grinder, and then finally the thing was dragged out into the street and loaded in the car. I mean, weird spot because it's semi-commercial, not as much residential right there, so the noise probably pushed mostly out into the street, which is kind of buffering the noise, so that's possible. But again, it's Faraday and Grand, so if it can happen there, lighting definitely should be higher on our priorities. And the citizens, I think, need to do that as well. And as part of national, our Neighborhood Watch monthly initiative was to try to leave your lights on. I don't know if we know how that's going. I haven't really done any actual driving around, and I don't know what has been added and what has been not, and I don't know if you have any sense of that either from a Neighborhood Watch perspective, but crime was not so good last week. You probably saw that. We had several vehicle trespasses, several burglaries. I mean, it's kind of Groundhog Day. We're trying to increase contacts. I have an initiative I'm going to probably introduce in a couple of weeks that we're going to try to work on. It's a little different. It's about contacting, and I'll kind of leave you hanging on that one. But I need to do some training because it involves pushing our authority to the edge, and we need to really be on our game to do that. There's a big difference between stopping and questioning and consensual contacts and stops and arrests. And so before we fully instigate that, we're going to make sure we do some training to make sure everybody's on the same page. But hopefully our contacts will go up, and maybe that will increase the awareness of people that we're watching them, who are willing to talk to them, Kind of like the concept of shoplifters. If you think somebody's doing something that you don't want them to do, you go help them. You know, that's the easiest way to stop a shoplifter is give them customer service, and that's kind of my goal. Administration piece, the bad news, the closing of the application process for another officer just closed, and we had no applications we could accept. We just opened it back up. It'll stay open until the 5th of February. My weekly bulletin is attached to your report, but it's pretty much redundant. I pulled the highlights out and put them on Facebook. The citation report is there and fairly consistent. We're averaging about 30 to 35 tickets a month. Not pushing to increase that because of the other initiative, you know, pushing for the contacts. I'd like to see tickets come for the contacts, but I can't force that. You know, some people will get a ticket and some people won't get a ticket. But the contacts are what I'm pushing for, and I think are important. We are really doing well with the K-9. The city manager and I are working on it's kind of a unique position because I have an officer that has his own dog. She's certified, ready to go, but she's his dog. So it's different from what we're used to. So we're going to do more of a contract with the employee to try to figure out how we split costs and do what's fair by him and her, the K-9. But she's a good dog. She's going to probably take Lena's spot. Lena probably doesn't have till summer. She's going to probably retire. And I'm working with the district attorney on some grants to try to get a second dog. And I really believe we're going to get that done with some other things that are going on, and probably very little impact on the budget, which will be really good. The positive, and we don't know how positive, is we had 13 applications for the code enforcement. We're taking 5 to interviews next Wednesday, so hopefully we'll fill that spot. So that's kind of the good news. And historically, I guess that's been fairly short on applications, but not this time. So hopefully this next time will be good for the police officer application. We are going to do a little bit of recruitment, but the timing is really bad right now. Most of the people that are actively in the academies are winding down over the next 3 months. So all those applicants aren't doing us a whole lot of good right now, but we're going to try to get our hooks into them so maybe they'll help by summer, which, you know, we'll be all summer training them, and then maybe by fall they'll be out on their own. So it's kind of a slow process. And then I know you guys I went through the goals really quickly last time. I didn't know if you had any questions at all on kind of the goals or some thoughts or any objections or just anything in general about the longer presentation last week. All right. Any questions this week at all? All right. Thank you. And I'd like to thank the guys as well. I don't deal with everybody much, but when I do, I get what I need, and I can't be happier, especially with the cars and the building. And so, thank you guys. Good night.
Thank you. When he was standing up here and he said, with the help of you guys, now I'm looking back the other direction, and it's the help of you guys, the public being involved in this crime issue that we have. Just wanted to make you aware of that.
If I can just say something too about the crime, you know, I live in Lariat, you know, and I know all of my neighbors. I know all of their phone numbers. I have them all in my contacts. I really feel like we all need to be a part of each other's communities and neighborhoods, and look out your windows. You know, you guys hear dogs barking, look out your windows. You know, the crime is getting bad. It's going to get worse probably. We don't see a whole lot of people trying to not buy drugs out there. You know, everybody's trying to do something. But I really feel like we need to watch out for each other and look out your windows. You know, look out your windows, turn your lights on. That's all it takes, you know, because people, I've been out there, I've done wrong, and that's what people are looking for. Is they're looking for people inside their houses, looking through their windows or turning their lights on. So there was an article in the newspaper a couple weeks back about turning your lights on at night. I encourage you guys, man, talk to your friends and your family and tell them to turn their lights on, you know. I know you guys don't like stuff getting stolen from you guys, So I think we need to look out for each other.
All right. Thank you. I apologize. I know I got a little emotional. I am passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about the men that I'm responsible for. Tonight you have my report. I'm going to keep it short, sweet. So really just a couple of things I want to touch on. In the streets, January posed the perfect scenario for us to get out and do some crack sealing. So we were able to get out. We got all 4 pallets that we had on hand. They're on various roads to try to keep our good roads in good condition. I'm waiting on some more product to come in. And if we continue to have weather like this, we'll continue to crack seal our good roads and seal them from moisture. We did have 2 water leaks from the holidays to present. Both of those leaks have been repaired. One was on Ulysses and the other one is on Lyle. And the one item that I have in my report that needs your approval is in the very last page of your packet is a letter from the Nazarene Church requesting that 2 of their taps be abandoned. Our code requires that council has to approve the abandonment of a tap. It is a little different area simply because according to the code, the lot has to be vacant prior to the abandonment of a tap. But for these 2 particular taps, if you know where the Nazarene Church is, those lots that make up the Nazarene complex in the church, they already have buildings. They already have water and sewer taps to each of those buildings. There are 2 taps that basically go to the curb stop and they don't do anything else. The Nazarene Church has been literally paying for those 2 taps, monthly service fees, the base rates and everything else that's attached to them for decades. They have filed a formal request. I've had our crews go out and confirm that those taps do not have any beneficial use to those properties. They are not connected, and as such, I would recommend to council that you approve the abandonment of those 2 taps. And those taps are on your letter. It's account numbers 105.5210.04 and 2015790.01. Like I said, they have absolutely no benefit. They haven't had a benefit to the church, but the church has been faithfully paying those bills for decades. Okay.
I would move to accept the request to abandon from the Church of the Nazarene the 2 taps described as 105.5210.04.00 and 201.5790.0100.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Nita?
Councilor Elliford?
Aye.
Councilor Segala?
Aye.
Councilor Schlegel?
Aye.
Councilor Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Becker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, thank you. I appreciate it. It went a little longer than planned.
I'll keep it short, I promise. So at the last council meeting, you instructed for staff to put out an RFP for city attorney. That RFP has been put out. You also instructed staff to set up the timeline. So your timeline would be February 1st will be the deadline for acceptance of those RFPs. February 8th will be selection of the finalists by council. February 12th will be interviews for council. And February 15th will be to approve the contract, and that is on a scheduled council work session, or council meeting, sorry, not work session. I also have an RFP out for a deputy clerk position. My deputy clerk that I had took another job part-time, which gave her the benefits she was looking for at a part-time hours. So unfortunately, we lost a really good help there, but she had to do what was best for her. So I do have a RFP out for a contract employee for 25 to 30 hours a month that would just come in and assist with court at this time. City Manager Forrest and I have reviewed this, and we're gonna let this go for 6 months and then review it again in 6 months to see if we actually need a full-time employee as a deputy clerk. So the only other thing is I will be out the next 2 weeks. The police department, the chief and his 2 sergeants are going to back me up on the jail notifications. So I have backup there. And then Judy Egbert, who was the interim city clerk before you guys hired me, is going to come in the 24th, the 30th, and the 31st, and the 1st to help with court and council while I'm out. So, do you have any questions?
Can you repeat those dates again? 24th?
February 1st is deadline.
On the days.
Oh, that Judy will be here? Oh, I'm sorry, the 24th, the 30th, 31st, and the 1st.
IT.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I also will keep this very short for you tonight. You have my written report before you. I just wanted to point out one of the larger items on that report, and that is you have 3 virtual host servers that runs your entire city. Of those 3 servers, you have one that is an older server that was donated by the city of Alamosa to you. Got your initial data center up and running and served you well for the last year and a half. We attempted to do a software upgrade on that server the other day and found that it is incompatible with the newer softwares. So while we can continue on our current version of software for about another year, we will need to plan in 2019 to replace that server. And that's a fairly large expense to the city. It would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000. And other than that, you've got everything from IT right there. Thankfully, December was a quiet month for us. Got to let the guys have a little bit of time off, and still maintained your city network. Any questions for me this evening?
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before the rest of you city guys leave, I want to tell you thank you. I appreciate it very much. I know a few of you, and I'll get to know you better, but I appreciate everything you do very much.
We all appreciate the water. And
Is there any council reports? Anybody?
Yeah, I got a little bit of something. Anyone else before I go?
Is it gonna take that long?
No, I'll follow you. That's all right.
Okay. I'd just like to give a shout out to Officer Robert Pino. Did a ride along with him last Saturday night. I'd like to thank the chief for setting it up. It was a very good experience. He actually drove around and pointed out places that had lights on that didn't have before, just from that initiative that was in the paper, where turn your lights on at night, and it was kind of impressive, the amount of knowledge that he has of this community. You know, it was kind of interesting. We don't often view cops as teachers. A lot of times we see them as the in-your-face enforcer kind of guy. But Robert Pino really, he's a good teacher. And he's got a lot of knowledge, and I really enjoyed picking his brain. I mean, of course, I got to see officers Dylan Golden, Stephen and Robert Pino clear the entire city hall. We got a call in that they saw somebody pointing the gun at somebody else and walk into City Hall, and we're like, okay. So they cleared the entire building and found nothing. We're assuming they mistook some of the officers standing outside talking. But it was interesting, and it was a good night, and I definitely encourage anybody that wants to know a little bit more about what the police officers face. I'd highly recommend doing a ride along. It's very enlightening. So.
I want to echo all the positive comments about Public Works. I've had an opportunity to, as a citizen over the last few years, to work with Public Works, specifically with Rob and the whole crew there. They kind of grimace a little. They see me coming, oh, this guy needs, another project done. But they've always been helpful and easy to work with. And Rob especially has come up with some great ideas. He pretty much masterminded I gave him an outline of where the neighborhood watch signs that we had discussed ought to be. And he said, well, that's nice. You mind if I rework that a little? And he's the one that redesigned this whole thing and has really, as much as I've driven around the city, I keep seeing new signs, and really it's just the old ones that got redirected. Some new ones, we do have some more coming in. That and working with the PD has been a blessing. The other departments, obviously just will be spending some time working. The one thing I did want to mention very publicly is Monday, the 22nd, is a real important neighborhood watch meeting. Anybody that can make it, if you can't, send your neighbor. But get out to that if you can. We've got refreshments and giveaways, and we're looking at a whole new vision and view of what can be done. And Chief Rosecrans shares that mission and that vision and that passion, and I'm excited about what's coming up. Monday the 22nd at 6 p.m. at the Information Center.
Put that in your smartphones.
Do you have anything?
I don't.
Kathy?
I just want to thank you guys for your vote of confidence. I hope I can live up to the expectations. I've lived in the city for generations. I'm fifth generation Monte Vista resident, and I don't know, my devotion is to this city and the good people here. So if you need me, my number will be available somewhere, I'm sure. So thank you. And I also had personal experience with the city works, public works department at a house my son lives in, and he had a water main that had broken and used this astronomical amount of water in a month, and you sent someone over very quickly, and he came in and checked the toilets. I mean, I was just amazed. He went above and beyond what he's left, but I was very thankful, and I was very public about saying you guys rock.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All I have for you guys, we got off to kind of a rough start. And I think what pleases me right now tonight is seeing all the faces here, community members that I sat through a lot of city council meetings since July when I was asked to run. And I see people in here that typically, normally you don't see. And I want to thank you, because that to me is important, because we're bringing the community back together. And that's what we need, because it's not just mine or Joe's, it's our community. And that's what we need to do. We need to build on that. So thank you all for being here today.
There's more of us good guys out there. Right?
Good far outweighs the bad.
Good. So we adjourn the meeting until, right?
That's correct.
Adjourn until February. Thank you.
There you go.
All right.